Hey everybody, it is Trags Mike Petralia back with the latest installment of the Jungle Roar podcast, brought to you by our fine folks at Prize Picks and All Good Home Improvements. And of course, as always, my colleagues, my great colleagues at CLNS Media. My pleasure to welcome into the post-preseason edition of this Jungle Roar podcast, Jeremy Rauch of the Bengals flagship station, the flagship TV station of the Cincinnati Bengals here in the greater Cincinnati area, Fox 19. Jeremy, thank you very much for joining. It is a busy time of year, to be sure.
It really is. And a lot of the countdown right now is until Tuesday, as we talk right now, Tuesday, 4 p.m., getting the roster cut down to 53 men and then seeing the practice squad and all that shake out. But there's a lot of intrigue, Trags, around what this Bengals team might do, I think, still on the waiver wire. There are some depth issues, and so it's a very interesting time for this team and a lot of work to be done.
Dalton Risner, that's the name that comes up reportedly, and multiple sources have reported he was in town last week. Certainly Zach Taylor, and understandably, keeping mum on that when he was asked about it on Thursday, I believe, was the last chance we had to speak with him before the game. And, of course, we spoke with Zach Taylor after the game on Saturday, that 41-14 ugly preseason finale. But he is not giving up any details as to who the Bengals might be bringing in, and you understand that. But when you hear the name Dalton Risner, do you think that's a good fit?
I think it's one of those things that they should really try to get done. And I've had some fans talking to me, Trags, about this, saying, well, they let him get out of the building. Well, Noah Fant also got out of the building, and then he decided to come back to Cincinnati as well. So these kinds of things, they play out. When I did ask Zach Taylor about not necessarily Dalton Risner, but adding depth at guard, he said, we're still working through it. I thought that was a positive response, because a head coach is not often going to say, yes, we want this guy when it's a guy they're kind of courting like Dalton Risner. But I think saying we're still working through it is his way of saying the team is definitely still trying to get this done. I think it's important because we know about the depth issues at guard and on the offensive line. Look, Cordell Volson is expected to be out for the season with the shoulder injury. And then you think about Cody Ford. He's one of those guys who can swing tackle, swing guard, depending on depth. Either way you look at it, Trags, there's not a lot of depth there on the offensive line, especially at guard. So even if it is Lucas Patrick, let's just say, as the other starting guard opposite Dylan Fairchild week 1, I think you need another veteran guy in there like Dalton Risner to be an option. Yes, he hasn't graded out well recently in his career. We know he's getting up there in age as well, but I think they need a good body to come in and be that guy if Lucas Patrick still has issues or is banged up.
Well, I think that's a great point, Jeremy. And when I look at that right guard position, I look at what are the Bengals going to want to do? Are they going to want to flex between the run game and the pass game? And if that's the case, I think they're leaning towards Lucas Patrick, because in talking to a couple of people inside that locker room, Lucas Patrick is the best run blocking guard they have. Yes, he gets a lot of criticism because the Bengals dropped back so much even in the preseason, and he gave up a few pressures. There's no question about that. But when you talk about the run game and the balance that the Bengals want to have this year, especially getting that 1 or 2 yards they've been unable to attain in years past in short yardage situations on 3rd down and even 4th down, they need to have a guy they can trust in the middle of the line. And like it or not, Lucas Patrick is that guy for right now.
Absolutely. I think that's a good point. And what I would say to that is, your run game, and everyone who watches the NFL knows this, your run game is essentially part of your defense.
Yes.
if you cannot have a healthy run game, a good run game where you can't sustain longer drives, we don't have to go back a couple of years and have these 10 to 12 play drives every time for the Bengals where it's the too high shell and you're trying to figure out how to sustain long drives. It doesn't have to always look like that, but they do need to elongate drives a little more. As exciting as it is to see Ja'Marr Chase running free for 70 yards, the defense comes right back on the field. This defense has holes. They need some help. And I think the biggest help for this defense could be that run game and just bringing in some longevity to the drives, right, for the offense. So I think that is a good point. The Bengals are a pass-heavy offense. That's how Zach Taylor likes it. He's not going to shy away from that. But certainly I think that plays a role.
Okay, and finishing up the interior offensive line position and guys that could play right guard. What did you make of Jalen Rivers getting as much play as he did on Saturday? Zach Taylor asked about it after the game by Paul Dehner Jr. of The Athletic. Said essentially he just wanted to see a few more reps from the rookie, but to see a high-profile rookie draft pick play significant minutes in a preseason finale is somewhat unusual.
Yeah, I mean, we saw the same thing with McKinley Jackson on the defensive line, Trags, and I know it's different here, but it's one of those things where it feels like Zach wants Jalen to show him something because he realizes where they are.
Point.
Zach doesn't have full autonomy to just go into the front office and say, we need depth at guard, and these are the three guys that I want. Pick a couple and help me out. Like he knows what he's working with here. And so he needs to know what Jalen Rivers is made of. Even though the dude is a rookie and he is a lower draft pick, he wasn't expected, I don't think, to be in that spot to play the entire final preseason game, or it wasn't supposed to look like that. And Zach still needs to see what he's made of. Can he handle it if he's called upon? If this thing with Lucas Patrick is nagging, if they don't get Dalton Risner, whatever it might look like, I think he needed to see more from him. So that to me was the answer for anyone that played more in that game than they should have, a la McKinley Jackson. I need to see more out of you and see what you can handle. So that's where we are with Jalen Rivers. Now, as far as my opinion of how he's looked, I think he's held up okay. I mean, this is a guy who I don't think there were high expectations of him right away, but now
he's a fifth round pick. It's not like he's a first, second, or third rounder who is expected to come in and contribute immediately,
and they're already
at a level.
And they're already asking a lot of Dylan Fairchild, considering where he was drafted. So this is not one of those things where you expect him to have a role right away. But here we are. Here we are with depth, and he's a guy they need to know right now with the season coming. If we got to throw you in there, are you ready? I think it's a lot of that.
Speaking with Jeremy Rauch of Fox 19 here in Cincinnati, the official flagship TV station of the Cincinnati Bengals. You guys were able to have 2 of the 3 preseason games on your airwaves. How did the logistics go before we get to the defense? How did it go?
It went great. Look, this is our second year doing this, Trags. The funniest thing about this is when the Bengals play on our air and we have the pregame show leading up to kickoff, I will have friends and people all over say, "Hey, I saw you on TV." And I'm like, I've been on TV in Cincinnati for almost 12 years. But and that's the reality of it. It's like you actually have a pregame show and an event hilarious. Where everyone is watching. The same thing happened when the Bengals made their runs back-to-back years in 21 and 22 in the playoffs. So it's always a funny thing, but it's very exciting for us. Like there isn't a better opportunity to showcase what we do in storytelling and conversations with players and just setting up the moment of a game. All of that is a huge privilege for us, Trag. So we enjoy it. And it was cool kind of having year 2 with it because it's like, all right, we got our bearings last year. It's like any rookie. We're second year guys now. We understand kind of what it takes. So it's been great.
By the way, I lied. I want one more question on the offensive line, and not a question that gets asked a lot, but behind Ted Karras, we're assuming it's Matt Lee, because he started on Saturday in the preseason finale. He's another guy, another 7th rounder, by the way. I think they're most comfortable with him, but if Ted Karras goes down for any amount of time, I think they want a guy in that critical position who can call line protections, period, and give Joe Burrow some sense of confidence that the guy in front of him knows what he's doing.
Yeah, that's one of the interesting things when it comes to the back end of the roster, and you talk about cut downs and everything. The other question would be Seth McLaughlin out of Ohio State, right? The undrafted rookie free agent. So
I think both could make, by the way.
That's a lot. The thing is you can swing Seth, you can swing Matt, you can use them in different ways if you have to. So I think it's a possibility, but I think if I were to pick one of the 2 Trags, I would go with Matt Lee because he's a guy who's been in the building. He's a guy that they drafted that I think that they still have some comfortability with, but I think the upside to Seth is pretty high. He was viewed as one of the best centers in college football before he had that injury in his final season at Ohio State. They went on to win the championship and all that. But I think there's a lot of upside to his game. If there were bigger upside, he might have been drafted, right? But
so here's the way I read that, not to interrupt you, but
yeah,
the way I read this is which player is most unlikely to get through waivers if you cut him, if you expose him to waivers.
that's fair.
I think Matt Lee is more likely to get through. I think if Seth McLaughlin is back out there, and he was the highest graded player not drafted when the Bengals scooped him up, I think you protect Seth McLaughlin and hope that Matt Lee gets through, and then bring back Matt Lee back on the practice squad. That's
interesting. So let me just say this, and I pulled this. Actually, this conversation, Trags, happened the other day. I don't know if you were part of it. I pulled a lot of the media, right, in our media workroom in there.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of input from Ben Baby to James Rapine to Paul Daner, like across the room. And I was wondering, do you think it's Matt Lee or Seth McLaughlin? Now, being fully transparent, some of those guys said, we know you're a Buckeye fan, Jeremy, so we know who you're going with. But honestly, it was split right down the middle. So that's fascinating. Your take is the best one I've heard yet, Trags. So great job on that.
Thank you.
Thinking about waivers and how that might play out, that might be the best take that I've heard and how the Bengals could or should play this, because honestly, I can't say either way which way it's going to go.
Now, we're assuming that they don't keep both, and there's position flexibility, and Matt Lee can certainly play both center and guard, and and I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but McLaughlin is more of a pure center.
He is, and that's true. God forbid, Trax, that Ted Karras goes down. I mean, honestly, God forbid that one of these tackles goes down, because I was
going to get to that.
And I don't mean to jump the gun, but like we can get to it, but that's where they are right now in the offensive line. And that's why Zach says we're still working through it, because there's a lot to work through in the O-line.
Who is your swing tackle at this point?
It's probably Cody Ford, honestly. I would still put him out there as the tackle. I know that like Bengals fans probably are going to crash out a bit about that option, but I don't love truly the other options. And to me, he's a guy who can at least be decent-ish in that spot. So that's what I go with.
So, and I think Devin Cochran again is a practice squad candidate. I just do, because you want to have some depth on the interior. I think you have your swing in Cody Ford, like you mentioned. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. Speaking with Jeremy Rauch of Fox 19 here in Cincinnati. This episode of the Jungle Roar podcast brought to you by our great friends at PrizePicks. Preseason football is over, but the regular season is fast approaching, and college football already here. So don't miss out on any of the action this season on PrizePicks. PrizePicks is simple to play. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. If you get your picks right, you could cash in and win up to 2,000 times your money. PrizePicks puts their members first, so that means all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. PrizePicks offers Venmo, Apple Pay, MasterCard, and more for quick and easy deposits into your account this football season. PrizePicks also invented the Flex Play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup is not perfect. And Jeremy, you know all of us, who's perfect these days. You can double your money even if one of your picks does not hit. That's a big bonus. And PrizePicks is the best way to win real money this football season. Which players are going off, which ones are not. Make your picks in less than 60 seconds. Turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today and use the code CLNS to get $50 instantly in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Back with Jeremy Rauch of Fox 19 here in Cincinnati. All right, let's get to the defensive line. This is fascinating, but I want to talk about a feature you had been working on in the subject we talked about before we began recording. Shemar Stewart. I knew he would be an impact player early in camp. I didn't think he would come on this fast and this strong. I don't think the Bengals knew what they had because there was a lot, Jeremy, there was a lot of consternation about the lack of production, sack production in college at Texas A&M. What I've seen is much more a Sam Hubbard type of player, a guy who can set the edge on the run, is physical, can play on the edge, and you can move him on the inside of the defensive line. I've really liked what I've seen.
Yeah, it's been great. It's been everything you could ask for and more. And from what I understand, Trags, there was some consternation around whether or not the Bengals were actually going to draft him. They had a lot of options still on the board when it came to their pick, and they decided to, in the end, go with the traits pick, right? And we've talked about this a million times with Shemar Stewart. Yep. Traits over production. And then we have the contract issues, right? And it leads all the way up to training camp. And then he finally shows up at training camp. And on day one, I remember talking about this because I think it was on a Sunday. We had our Cincinnati sports show. We kind of broke down what we thought about Shemar day one. And he was more out of shape than I thought he would be. He joked about it with us talking after that practice. He joked about pouring Gatorade into his eyes on accident and all those things, like just all the stuff. But he's very transparent that way. But the way that he carried himself, the way that he looked that day, just everything that happened with the drama with the contract, I continue to think, I don't know about this guy. Like, I don't know if this guy is ready to come in here and be the dude they need him to be. Now, fast forward to present day, I could not be more impressed with the things that Shemar Stewart is doing. You can see a little bit of how in college he didn't always get the sack, but he's getting to the quarterback. He's batting balls in practice. He did it to Joe Burrow recently.
Yep.
He's done it in games a little bit. We've seen him put the pressure on. I like that he moves around a lot on the defensive line. And then in talking to him, you start to understand the way that he operates and his mindset. He's a freak. You can see it on the field, the way he's built. You're like, okay, this is why the Bengals wanted this guy. Now I get it. But then he says to me this past week, I want to win Defensive Rookie of the Year, right? So he's got these lofty goals. He talks about the bullets flying on week one. He's confident. And, the last thing I'll say about him is, this is a guy who, and all of these questions that we've had about him, I've wondered, does he have, even with all the stuff that I've seen, does he still have what it takes? I don't know if Bengals fans are going to like this comp track, so hang with me here for a second.
Sure.
He's got a little bit of Vontaze Burfict in him. Hang with me, okay? Vontaze was reckless. He was a guy who the NFL sought out for fines. He did things on the football field that were obviously too far. But go back to what happened when Shemar Stewart hit Joe Burrow in practice. And everyone is like, you've got to be kidding me, right? And it instigates this fights. You need a guy who plays on that edge. That's too far. Cannot touch Joe Burrow in practice. Cannot go that far. He's not going to be Vontaze Burfict at a football field. But does he have that edge where it goes right to the limit and you think, dude, dial it back. Dial it back before you get fined or hurt someone. You need a guy like that in that Bengals defensive room on that defensive line. Shemar Stewart has so much more of that, Trags, than I ever thought he would. It's a little bit of that dangerous vibe. I love that about Shemar, and that's why I flipped 180 on this dude.
So that's a great point you bring up, because here has been my criticism of the Cincinnati Bengals defense. They don't have enough dogs.
Yeah.
They don't have enough MFers, for lack of better expression, and better term. They need, I think Trey has it. I don't think there's any question about that, but he's so specialized. You need somebody who's going to be like that 3 downs, every 3 downs that he's on the field, not just a specialized, go get him on 3rd down, turn Bulldog Trey loose and go get the quarterback. That's great, but you want it more and on every single snap. I think DJ Reader brought that. I like what I've heard from TJ Slaton. TJ Slaton has not garnered a lot of headlines, which I think in a way is a good thing. As long as TJ is healthy and can get on the field, I think, and Sheldon Rankins had that issue with, diabetes and whatnot last season. It was really something terrible that he had to go through, but he wasn't able to stay on the field. If TJ Slaton is able to stay on the field with Shemar, and then you put Chris Jenkins, who you've seen his athleticism come through here in the preseason, which I think is a really good thing. and who else am I forgetting? Chris Jenkins, BJ Hill. BJ Hill.
Yeah.
So that's your core four on the defensive line.
Yep.
Your thoughts on McKinley Jackson?
So he's a guy that, we've talked about it briefly, but he's a guy that the Bengals expected to see more out of this year. And I think my biggest takeaway with him is you look at a guy of his size, it feels like if he's a C-, C+, somewhere in that range kind of player, he's a guy who's going to find his way on the field more often because he's just a massive human at that size on the interior defensive line. And the Bengals haven't seen enough from him in training camp and the preseason. It's the reason why he played the entire game in the final preseason game. That is not supposed to happen for a guy like that. And Zach Taylor, basically, Zach obviously I think he's one of the best in the NFL about choosing his words as far as a head coach goes. Like when Zach says something, he is very good with the media and he knows when to say it and how to say it and what it's supposed to sound like. And what he said about McKinley Jackson postgame, basically, in a matter of terms, was this guy still has something to prove, and we need to see it from him right now. And I did not expect to see that from McKinley Jackson. So to me, that's my point of view on McKinley is he's a guy, and we see him hanging out with Shemar Stewart all the time. Like those guys are always hanging out pregame. They're walking together. They're
teammates,
together.
Obviously, at A&M.
They're teammates at A&M, which is a good point, but they're buds and they're hanging together. And I wonder if Shemar is looking over like, dude, like, are you going to be here? Like, is this good? I mean, they need that. They need him there on the defensive line. But, that's where it is with McKinley Jackson right now. I did not expect it to be there, but that's where we are. The Bengals need to see more out of him. And the Bengals need a guy like him. His body, his fit, what he's supposed to be, his size, the way that he plays there on the defensive line for the Bengals. All those things are there. Production has to follow.
Jeremy Rauch of Fox 19. He does an amazing job covering all things Cincinnati sports, but of course, the Bengals on the flagship station of the Bengals, Fox 19 here in Cincinnati. Want to tell you about All Good Home Improvement. All Good has been helping homeowners for 32 years. When looking for a home improvement company, the number one quality they are looking for is trust. For the last 32 years, All Good has been trusted to help homeowners replace their windows, install new vinyl siding, install new gutters, and of course, professionally install a new roof. All Good offers interest-free financing with payment starting at just $99 a month and most importantly, no money down. All of All Good's products are professionally installed and backed by both a material and labor warranty. And to schedule a free in-home consultation, you can simply call 513-247-2900, 513-247-2900, or if you want more details, you can always go to their website, that is myallgoodhome.com. Back with Jeremy Rauch of Fox 19 here in Cincinnati. All right, what about the secondary? This intrigues me. Daijahn Anthony, who got dinged up the other day in the preseason finale, and PJ Jules. I think it's Daijahn Anthony. I don't think from what we understand from Zach, the hamstring issue is going to be too severe, but it's still something that's worth monitoring, I think.
Yeah, we talk about the secondary, it's like when you go to your favorite ice cream shop, Trags, and they've run out of your favorite 3 flavors. And so you have to pick not just like your first, second, or third option. You're down to like your 4th option. Like I wanted to get Buckeye Blitz at Graders, right? And now I got to go down and get like key lime. And I had no intention of getting key lime.
I might be turning around and walking out the door at that
Nothing
point,
against key lime.
I get it, but I like my key lime in my pie, not my ice cream.
Yeah. So you walk into your favorite ice cream shop and you're just not getting what you want. And that's just where they are. It's why I wanted Malachi Starks back in the draft, and here we are. And I understand how things have played out. They could have made a decision in the 2nd round to go after a safety or whatever. But it's the most concerning, I think, to the positions. The most concerning position still to me, I would say, is safety. It really is. Yeah. And you think about Jordan Battle, and you want to see just more grit out of his game. And then he's playing it like a Pro Bowl against the Commanders and kind of laying up on a tackle instead of actually going for the tackle, and allowing a touchdown that way. And it's been too much of that. And so then you have Geno Stone, who's banged up. And now Daijahn Anthony's banged up, and we don't know how severe it's going to be, but man, like it's shaky, right? Like you're out on a bridge and it feels like it's crumbling midway through, and you got a long way to go. So that's where we are in the safety room right now. Honestly, if it were me, I would be seriously thinking about adding safety depth with the waiver wires or somehow, some way right now, right away, Trags. I don't like where they are. I don't feel good about it. And I think that would be something that they would want to go after. I know Justin Simmons has been a big talker. He's been sitting around for a long time. It just feels like they're in a Hail Mary spot. Whatever they do here, Trags, I don't know if it's going to be the right thing or the right fix or the best thing, but they got to do something. And I don't love any of the options.
I simply do not understand. And I get there's special teams implications, but if you need a safety, you need a starting safety to come in and take command. Why would Justin Simmons hurt the situation? He wouldn't. It's the right price. I understand that, but assuming you could work out the financial details with a guy like Justin Simmons, why wouldn't you bring him in? Nobody has still yet explained to me that thoroughly on a team that needs one or two defensive pieces to think they are a Super Bowl defense.
I agree. And I mean, you even got and I don't think this is going to happen, Trags, but you've got the Patriots basically saying with Duggar, that
yes,
we are open to potentially moving on from him. And that would be, it could potentially be costly for the Bengals. But again, someone's got to slam their fist on the table and say, this is not good enough. And something has to happen right now.
Kyle Duggar would be such a non-Bengal move to give up a draft pick or two, but say, you know what, the time is now. We're going out and getting safety in the prime of his career. What the Patriots did with Rodney Harrison. When Bill Belichick brought Rodney Harrison to Foxborough, the iconic story was that he brought him to all those sketchy little restaurants and dive areas, and then they brought him to a chain restaurant on Route 1 outside Foxborough and said once he got him in the restaurant, he wasn't getting away. He's my guy. I'm bringing him in. Do that with Kyle Duggar. I understand that's not the way the Bengals have always done business. I am totally aware of that. But if you're a Bengal fan, wouldn't you love to see the team once do that and say, screw it, we're going to pull the trigger, we're going to bring him in. This guy is obviously a proven commodity in safety play and secondary play in the NFL. Why not go get him?
Imagine the reaction. Imagine the turn, because the fan base is really uneasy right now with the front office, right? Like it's not a great trusting relationship where we are and the way things have played out with some of those spots. So imagine this scenario. They go for it with Kyle Duggar and get Trey signed in the next 2 weeks. Can you imagine the turn from the fan base and how they would feel about where this team is? I mean, it's one of those
doable. That's the thing.
It is doable. And here's the thing, Trags, on top of that, you already talked about this a bit, but like, this is one of those things where you hear, everyone that watched not only quarterback, but Hard Knocks in season last year. And you hear Joe Burrow saying things like, my clock is ticking, like we understand that he is signed through 2029, but like he feels that. The Bengals should feel that clock ticking just the same.
That's
when you think about the Super Bowl window and understanding that in this next year or two with T and Shemar and Mike Gesicki and Chase Brown and Joe Burrow and everything else in play, and maybe getting Trey for 3 years, at least 2, you would hope. Right. Here we Shemar Stewart's here, right? Here we go. It's like you're not trying to drive the ball 350 yards here. For me, like it's step up to the T Bengals, put it in the first cut, 260 down there. Like you're not asking to bomb one here. This is doable. Right. It's reasonable. And it would make this team instantly a real contender, not just a we'll see contender.
And forget the message it sends to the fan base, because the fans don't win games. Every fan knows they don't win the game. The message it would send inside the locker room, like that, it would grab everyone's attention. It would say, okay, they are serious. I better be serious, because there's a new attitude here about what our mission is this year and a new urgency. Yeah. And when players play with urgency and they're talented, which this group clearly is, they get to that next level. Does Trey get done?
I've been telling everyone that'll listen, yes. Yeah. Someone asked me yesterday, I said 98.7%. I mean, I could go higher than that. Here's my take on this. It's been my take on this. Trey didn't want to lose money to start camp. He lost $250,000. That was only 5 days and $250,000. He's going to lose more than that in a game check. So here we're coming towards that. Every hand has been dealt. Okay, Trey has played his hand in the offseason. The Bengals have played their hand and saying, like, we'll listen. They've always been listening, but they made it public again just to kind of remind everyone, like, if you want to try to make some crazy offer for Trey, or Trey, if you want to see what you got, go for it one more time. It's not happening, in my opinion, and no one's going to give Trey exactly what he wants. So let's just kind of put it like this, right? And I'm just throwing numbers out. Let's just say it's $35 million a year for 3 years, and Trey wants the guaranteed money to be the right amount. Maybe he has to swing back a few million towards a number he doesn't love as much, but I think that's what's going to happen. I think he's going to get basically the years he wants, the annual average salary he wants. I think he's going to bend on the guaranteed money, and I think he's going to decide, I don't want to lose any money come week 1.
What about Jermaine Burton? I find this storyline fascinating given his injury or the re-aggravation of a knee injury on Saturday in the first half of the game against the Colts. How does this impact the 53-man roster? I think it has the potential of being fairly significant. There are a number of different ways the Bengals could go here. If the knee injury isn't that serious, they could explore trading him. If it is more serious, they could place him on IR. When do they place him on IR? Because, as you know, and fans may or may not know this, if you place the player on IR and save that spot, and give that 53-man spot to someone else, but you do it before the deadline on Tuesday, you lose the player for the year. He's out for the year. He cannot return. If you place him on the 53-man and you want to keep somebody else, you might have to expose them. An Isaiah Williams, for instance. Isaiah Williams would be exposed. I think we agree Mitchell Tinsley has a spot on the 53-man roster. But what about Jermaine Burton? Where could you see the Bengals going with regard to his status on the team?
It's a good question, Trags, and I honestly don't know if I have a great answer for it right now, because I'm with you. It's in a tough spot as far as like whether or not you place him on IR, you wait and see what happens. This is a guy that I think that they wanted to rely on. Like we've seen, Trags, we've seen him, in special teams in the return game look pretty good. Even in the first preseason game when he did injure that knee, at least in my opinion, Zach kind of implied this when he injured that knee in the first preseason game. It was on a really good return, and you're reminded of what he can be. You're hopeful of what he can be in that receiving room, and now it creates a unique situation for them. I would like to see it play out in a way where they can somehow shelf him and still have flexibility to like add in a spot they weren't going to have otherwise. But I think it's going to be difficult, and I think the next 24 hours is going to tell us a lot, Trags. But I don't know the severity of it right now. Maybe you know more than I do, but I think if they would, if in a perfect world, they don't have to do the IR move. He is a guy that can still be around in a few weeks, and it's not that serious. But like we've also seen Zach Taylor, the way that he likes to play things is call it week to week and let things play out as long as they possibly can with the guy, so they don't have to lose that spot. So we'll see.
It's interesting because Jermaine Burton isn't just another player. If you place him on IR for the whole season and redshirt him, he is a player who has had trouble keeping focus when he's not engaged with the team.
Yeah.
And maybe if he's on IR and is required to come in for treatment every single day, maybe and stay around the team, remain around the team, maybe that can help him. I don't know. I'm just throwing these theories out there, but it's interesting to me how the Bengals go forward with this because it will impact that sixth receiver that we're assuming that they keep six, not seven receivers.
Yep.
It'll be interesting to see how they do that. Any other areas on the roster you think could surprise people come Tuesday at 4?
Yeah, Joe Danneman asked me the same question on our Cincinnati Sports Show, and I basically said I didn't think there were going to be any major surprises at the back end of the roster. I think there are some guys who have done pretty well for themselves. I think, you think about a Kendall Milton in the running back room, who I think did well in the final preseason game. That's obvious. You can look at his numbers. He's a guy that I think the Bengals liked last year in a lot of ways, just being around, as far as the practice squad goes and things like that. I think that they like the guy, but I don't think that they're going to keep a fourth running back. And you might disagree with me, Trags, but I think it's going to be
not. I think 3.
So I think it's going to be Chase Brown, it's going to be Samaje, and it's going to be Taj Brooks. And I think that's a really good running back room as it stands. And so then you're getting into practice squad conversations. So I don't think that there's going to be any major surprises. I am curious to see what they do with the offensive line, how that shakes out. I think that'll be interesting. But other than that, I think it's going to be somewhat standard for this team. I don't love the back end of this roster this year, Trags, where it is. I know that Zach has talked about depth and loving the depth in this team. We heard it after the draft and all that. But then you get to where the rubber meets the road now that the season's going to start. And I just don't love where they are in the back end of the roster.
No, and I would tend to agree with that because of the offensive line and because of the safety room. And I would argue they may even could use another cornerback, just to give them a demonstrated, established veteran. The surprise that I think a lot of people are going to find on my 25 on CINCINNATI.com, I'm keeping 6 linebackers, and I'm only keeping 4 interior defensive linemen. And I just think that based on what their defense is and how much Al Golden is going to expect this defense to run sideline to sideline and be much faster, I think you want guys like Joe Giles-Harris and Shaka Hayward on the roster if you need them, and their special teams, obviously, demonstrated ability as well.
Well, and Shaka Hayward after the game the other day, I think talked like a guy who believes that he's in a good spot. You know what I mean? And so that's great for him. I agree with you in the cornerback room. I really do, because DJ Turner is a guy that we don't know if he can stay healthy. I mean, this is where we are. Dax Hill's career has been largely unhealthy. And so when you think about how that room plays out, it's not just the back end of the room. It's really the guys that they want to rely on as starters, that they want to be healthy. Cam Taylor-Britt is in that conversation as well. So I think I agree with you in that department where they need to have that safety valve there because it's a room of guys, and the NFL is this way, but it's a room of guys who have too many of expected starters that could be dealing with injuries.
Indeed. Anything you're working on that you want to promote, Jeremy, on Fox 19 now?
Yeah, so the biggest thing I can promote right here is we have our Bengals season preview special coming up on Labor Day. That's September the 1st, Monday, September the 1st, so in about 1 week. And that's going to be at high noon on Fox 19 now. And the best thing about that show is it is a collaboration. It's the only show of its kind, really, that we do before the season, where it is basically produced half by the Bengals and their staff, their video crew, Marissa Contepelli, and our staff. So it's a 50-50 split. So you will see behind-the-scenes stuff. Think kind of like the Hard Knocks vibe, right? The NFL film stuff. You'll see like all that behind the scenes, the incredible video and access that the Bengals video crew has. And then you're going to see stuff from our point of view, conversations we've had and stories with Amarius Mims on wanting to be a Pro Bowl tackle this year, where he comes from, one of the smallest talents ever, right? And how he came out of there and all that. Great. You're going to see conversations with Chase Brown and Andre Yosevach. And so there's a lot of that from our side and the Bengals side as well. Obviously, Joe Burrow being a main feature in that. So that is Labor Day at noon, only on Fox 19 now, a 1-hour special. The other thing I'll say is we are back doing our live shows at Newport on the Levee once again this year. And usually the way that I work, that's a Wednesday from 6 to 7 o'clock in a normal game week. So the first show is Wednesday, September 3rd, 6 to 7 p.m. live at Newport on the Levee. And we are going to have players with us. We always have multiple. I don't know the exact players yet, but it's always a great time to see them up close, hear some funny stories, and have a great time.
You are the best, Jeremy. And I want to do a favor for your son, Cade, who was nice enough to allow you to record where you are recording this podcast. So a shout out to Cade Rauch.
I hope, if nothing else, you learned something about the periodic table. Trying to find his favorite one on here. He is.
Believe me. Yeah, go ahead.
No, he's in 5th grade. He's a 10-year-old. He's got Joey Votto back here, and well, there's 2 Joey Vottos here. And then this is from last year, I believe. But anyways, he's a very smart young man. So he loves the periodic table. He has favorite elements. I'm like, dude, I was never that way in school. So shout out to Cade.
Tell Cade that my first career discipline choice in college at Villanova was a chemistry major. Then I went to chemical engineering. Then I transferred to electrical engineering and communications. That was my path. So it all started with the periodic table, which is behind your head.
Man, and I was like, my mom was like, what are you going to do? And I was like, well, I'm not good enough to go pro, so I better just talk about sports. And here I am.
Jeremy, you're the best. Thanks so much for joining me on this episode of the Jungle Roar podcast, which has been brought to you by our great friends at Prize Picks and All Good Home Improvements. He is Jeremy Rauch of Fox 19 in Cincinnati. My name is Mike Petralia Trags. Thanks for downloading this episode of the Jungle Roar podcast. And as always, keep that jungle roaring.